Hello lovers, welcome to the Butterfly Effect podcast hosted by myself, Lauren Amy. This is for those who are ready to take up space, who are living a soft life loudly and are ready to savor the sweetness in each moment. Here we're going to embrace transformation, the beauty of the in-between and the magic of becoming. So pull up a seat and listen in because life is delicious and it's about goddamn time we eat it up. Hello stunners, happy Wellness Wednesday, welcome back to the Butterfly Effect podcast. I hope everyone's feeling well. Now, did we all take a little trip into the Manosphere this weekend and realise what in the holy Handmaid's Tale Black Mirror shit is this? Because I did. What the hell have we all just witnessed? Okay, if you don't know, Louis Theroux's latest documentary, Into the Manosphere, highlights red pill culture and real fragile, toxic masculinity to the extent that I don't think I've ever seen before in my life. But before we get into the utter chaos and stupidity that is, let's just have a little catch up because God, I feel like I need a few moments to just land. I've had such an annoying day. Just gonna be really honest, today has been so annoying. Mercury retrograde is just throwing all high hell at me, and right now I'm currently faced with the battle that I could be losing 6 years worth of all my business data. And if I don't laugh about it, I will cry. And I'm just praying to some sort of tech god that things pull through for me in some stroke of magic. I've spent my entire Monday waiting for Microsoft to call me. And you know when you're waiting for a call from someone you feel paralyzed, you can't really do anything. And I actually couldn't do anything because I can't access any of my files. And when they did eventually call me, they were like, there's nothing we can do for you. So that's really joyous. I love that for me, and we're just gonna breathe through it, I guess. I think it will all be fine. But yeah, as a result, I've had one of those really unproductive Mondays, and I despise that. I've been so flustered. I feel like I've done nothing with my day. And I was like, if I'm going to do anything, I'm going to make sure I sit and record the podcast. That's going to be my one achievement for the day. So if you're listening to this, then you know that I achieved at least one thing. Okay? This is a sign that I managed to achieve one thing today because I so nearly just wrote the whole day off and was just like, nah, this ain't the one. So right, we'll move on to the next day. Hopefully that will be a little bit better, but God, it's just one of those really annoying, unnecessary things that just didn't need to happen. So we're going to talk about more annoying things, i.e. the Manosphere. Have we seen the documentary? If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you do, but do prepared to just be absolutely flabbergasted at what is said on there, what it reveals, the type of behavior that's seen and portrayed and in some ways celebrated. Honestly, I've been doing a deep dive ever since. It's all popping up on my TikTok. It's all over social media. Everyone commenting about it. Everyone talking about it, which is the great thing about it. It has got people talking. The annoying thing about it is that it's taken a man, Louis Theroux, to talk about these issues with the patriarchy and that women face, and women have been saying this for years and years and years and years, but once again, it's taken a man to say it for us all to actually stop and listen. But we'll put that to one side, okay? So Into the Manosphere is a real deep dive into, as I said, red pill culture and this idea of being the alpha male. I actually want to vomit just in saying that. Oh, why am I talking about this? I really don't want to be talking about this, but we have to. The documentary follows a couple of interesting characters. One of them, I actually don't want to say his name or his handle, but he goes by HS Tiki Toki. I actually can't. Is this for real? Did I actually just say that? Is that the handle that he has chosen for himself? Now, I'll be honest, I can't actually remember any other of the guys' names because I don't need to remember them because they are just so up their own arses that, God, they're never going to see the light, which funnily enough, is what we're exploring in class this week. This whole like searching for the light, reaching for the light. We're at this point in our emergence where we're, celebrating light and how it can illuminate, everything around us. But also the light has a way of illuminating shadows, right? And I feel like the way in which the light is illuminating the shadows right now is highlighting the tragedy that is the Manosphere. So that's going to be a weird segue in this episode, but stick with me, all right? But one thing I loved about this documentary, and trust me, there's not much I love about this documentary, but one thing is just what an unbothered king Louis Theroux is. Like, I love that man. I've never really watched any of Louis Theroux documentaries in the past, but this guy is such an unbothered king where he's just listening to these boys sprout utter nonsense, and he's like, interesting. Like, just politely and quietly shutting them down whilst he's just witnessing pure chaos in front of him. And they're trying so hard to ridicule this man. They're trying so hard to slate Louis Theroux's name and all that he's built and all that he's done throughout his entire career. And Louis is the perfect example of a secure man in that moment. They can say whatever they want to Louis Theroux, and it just literally bounces off of him because he knows it's not true. And you know that phrase they say in an argument, whenever you kind of raise your voice or bite back, that's instantly when you lose. These boys are just constantly trying to bite back at Louis and say like, oh, Jimmy Savile this and Jimmy Savile that, and Louis done this, Louis done that. Louis done none of these things, and he knows it, so he doesn't need to bite back, he doesn't need to defend himself. But the point that these boys are trying so hard to tear him down, it just screams pathetic, insecure, fragile egos. That's all it is. And you know one thing about this documentary? I actually don't think that these boys believe in what they're saying. I think they've gone so far and built such a reputation for themselves that they just have to continue with it. They have no choice. This is where their money comes through, and that's a whole other topic in itself. But they get paid to say outlandish statements like this. They get paid for all this clickbait, this rage bait, okay? That's how they make their money. So they're trying to be the most outrageous they could possibly be. So I don't actually think that they believe in what they are saying. I think there's a part of them that knows that it's wrong and knows that it's incorrect, but they also know that it's going to get a reaction. So whilst my initial response to this documentary as I was watching it was like, this is so stupid. This is such stupid, immature boy behavior. You can't just label it as a stupid, because these boys in some ways are actually being kind of clever, because like I said, they're doing it all for clout. They're doing it all for the reputation that they have built so far, so that they feel they have to continue. They have to be more outrageous. They have to spur more chaos and more nonsense, because that is how they make more money. They are literally profiting from the fact that we are so outraged by what they are saying. And the annoying thing about this documentary, I know it's been said that or at least I'm pretty sure it was said that they weren't paid anything for this documentary. I think one of them was demanding more money or something. I can't remember if I dreamt that, but I'm pretty sure that's the thing. But even so, whilst this documentary is highlighting these things that we need to be aware of, and we need to be educating the younger generation especially on it, as they are being raised with social media. They are the ones that are going to see all of this content. But in a backwards effect, it's also brought more people to these creators' pages. Or like, even though I know some of them are banned off TikTok, even the one that's called HS TikToki, I can't say that, seriously. Even he has been banned from TikTok, which is ironic because his name is after TikTok and he is no longer on there. I tried to do some research today, which I was regretting because I didn't want to mix up my algorithm on the social media platforms, but hey ho, needs must. And yeah, he's no longer on there. But people are going to be searching for him now. People are going to be typing it into Google or whatever search engine they're using, and people are going to be actively searching out this kind of content. And maybe that's a good thing so people can really see what's being put out there, what's being put on the internet, because I hadn't seen any of this kind of culture. I hadn't seen any red pill content. I hadn't seen any of these podcast episodes. One of the guys on there has a podcast, and yeah, that was enraging. But I haven't seen anything of that. So I needed to do a quick search to actually see what is it, because I'd hate to be commenting on this just purely from the documentary. I feel like I need to see what it is that these boys are actually saying and how people are responding to it, like reading the comment sections and seeing what's in there. And like I said, that's the annoying thing. There's going to be lots of people like me, and it's going to be encouraging more traffic to these boys' pages. And annoyingly, in some way, they are going to be profiting from this documentary because they're bound to have more subscribers, more signups, more comments, more engagement, because people want to have their say and people will want to know more. But what I have loved is the amount of people that are now talking about it. And some people are sharing really, really interesting thoughts on the Manosphere, why this has happened and what needs to be done. And it's really encouraged me to think about it in different ways. So essentially what the Manosphere celebrates is this real alpha male, this dominating kind of personality. It almost takes bits and pieces of these old-fashioned views that men should be the provider, men should be going out and doing the work, bringing back the money, women should be the ones to stay at home, look after the children, look after the home. It takes bits and pieces from that old narrative and from that old viewpoint, but then shapes it into an entirely different beast, where the women, yes, they should be at home looking after the children, looking after the home, and they should only have one partner, and that is that man, that is that alpha male. Whereas that alpha male can go out and have as many partners as he wishes to, as many wives as he wishes to, because that is his so-called right. And that is his role as this alpha male. And whilst I am convinced that a lot of these boys, they are just so stupid, and again, with their heads so far up their own asses that they have no idea what they're actually talking about. A lot of what they are saying is to do with women, and again, further restricting women and seeing women as less than they are. But also the undertone of it is actually their own obsession with men. This is a really interesting viewpoint I saw on TikTok, I believe, where you know how women encourage nowadays to decenter men. I've probably said it before. In fact, I have done that myself. It is important to decenter men and actually build a life around what it is that you want to do, your own needs, your own wants, without purely doing it because a man might want you to, and pandering to that male gaze and dressing for that male gaze, acting towards that male gaze. Decentering men for women is a very important thing to do. And actually, it probably would be a good thing for these boys on this documentary to also decenter men, because they are also acting up for their male friends. Again, it comes back to all this clout, this rage bait, okay, that they are sprouting this nonsense because they are so desperate to impress the men around them. They also need to decenter men because they believe masculinity to be about, how many women you have and how much money you make, how many fancy cars you have. The one thing that really got me about this documentary was just how much posturing and peacocking there was. They really thought these fancy cars were super impressive. These suits were so impressive. The muscles were so impressive. Honestly, anytime one of them appeared on my screen, I could have vomited because it's not attractive in the slightest. One of them even claimed to know that he knows what women want better than women do. And I'm sorry, honey, I might not know what I want to have for breakfast each morning, but I know what my worth is, and I know what it is that I'm worthy of and what I deserve. And quite frankly, it is not for a man to tell me what I want, what I deserve, when I can have it, what I can do with it. Absolutely not. The level of audacity is off the charts. But as well as believing that I think these boys themselves need to decenter men, again, a lot of what they're saying is deep rooted insecurity, whether that stems from, I don't know, some kind of hurt or rejection in their past, or not having that father figure in their lives, or, you know, they too feel like they want to, they have this desire to belong. It's ironic. I think what these boys are craving, even though they're saying that they want multiple women, multiple wives, I think what they are actually genuinely craving is this level of intimacy, this desire to be seen, but they don't want to say that because that is deemed as weak, that is deemed as vulnerable, that is deemed as not manly enough, okay? And I'm seeing these boys, you know, flex their muscles and drive around in these fancy cars, and all I'm thinking, like, honeys, you don't need this big platform, you don't need this podcast platform. All you need is a group chat with a therapist and to talk about your feelings and maybe have a hug. You know, I think these boys are so desperate for a hug and a level of intimacy that no one has given them so far. No one really wants to give it to them right now because of their behavior, and the less intimacy, care, understanding, tenderness that they are receiving, the more macho and alpha male and masculine they are becoming, because, like, again, real men don't cry, real men don't need a hug, real men do this, blah, 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 blah. I think they just really need a hug. I think they just really need a hug, and to be told that they don't need to be acting up all the while. They don't need to be sprouting all this clout all the while. They don't need to be talking all this nonsense all the while. What if we actually just, you know, paused, took a breath, maybe had a hug? Not that I'd be hugging anyone, I would probably rather slap them, to be honest. That is why I'm not a therapist. I could not sit there. I could absolutely not sit there and hear the stuff that Louis Theroux was hearing, like, right to his face. I could not sit there. But anyway, one of the things that I did want to share on this episode that I've seen as responses to this documentary is this reel that I saw on Instagram. I'm gonna pick it up now. I think I actually originally saw it on TikTok this morning, and then I really wish that I saved it, and by some stroke of the universe, it was then brought to my attention on Instagram as well. So this is by, hang on, let me get right to the very beginning. This is by your money mate, Sarah, and I think she absolutely hit the nail on the head.
So I watched the Manosphere and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it, because those men or boys are so close to actually getting it. If you actually listen to what a lot of these men are saying underneath all of the, like, red pill, high value male language, they're actually describing real problems. Feeling disposable, working jobs that don't value them, living in a system that chews people up, feeling like the world wasn't built for them to succeed in. And they are right. They're just wrong about why. They are literally inches away from critiquing the actual system: capitalism, patriarchy, labor exploitation, the concentration of wealth, the structures that keep working people feeling powerless. And then at the last second, they go, and it's women's fault. And then they take a legitimate frustration about a system that is genuinely failing people and redirect it at the one group that has even less structural power than they do. And that's patriarchy. That is the system. Patriarchy isn't just men have power and women don't. It is a system that tells men that their entire value is based on what they earn, what they control, how little they feel, and then tells them that vulnerability is weakness and that asking for help is a failure, and that emotions are something to override, not understand. And when that system inevitably leaves them feeling empty and disconnected, because it absolutely will, because it is literally designed to, it gives them someone to blame. Women and immigrants, apparently. Basically anyone except the actual people holding the wealth and writing the rules. And then this is where money comes in, because the men at the very top of this, the political figures, the media figures, the ones who are bankrolling and amplifying this ideology, are the very definition of the system these men think that they are fighting against. Far-right politics benefits directly, financially and electorally when young men stay angry and stay divided and focused on culture wars instead of class. These men think that they are freeing themselves, and I would argue that they are actually getting closer and closer to the problem they're fighting against. The people profiteering from this ideology need these men to stay miserable, aimless and looking in the wrong direction. That is literally the business model. And then it functions like a pyramid scheme. The men at the top make enormous amounts of money by selling a worldview that requires men beneath them to literally repeat the same phrases and adopt the same beliefs and then never deviate. It's literally a script. So then if you show nuance, if you disagree, if you say, actually, I think that women might have a point, you're out. You lose the community, you lose the audience, and you stop making money. So that's not free thinking. It's literally a cult. And there was a moment in the documentary with that young man who said that he was homeless, and then he mentioned losing his brother. Oh my God, and you can literally see the pain on his face, like the real grief. And then he shut it down almost immediately. He moved straight past it. And that moment completely broke my heart because it showed exactly what's happening here. These men are speaking from a place of genuine unmet needs, real hurt, loneliness, grief, and they have never been allowed to process it. And the reason those needs are unmet is because of this exact system, this black and white patriarchal thinking that says men don't feel, men don't need, men don't cry, and basically doesn't allow them to be human. And I actually think underneath all of this, a lot of these men are craving deep, genuine connections with women, but they don't have the tools for it. Nobody's given them the tools. So instead of doing the extremely uncomfortable work of unpacking that, of sitting with that vulnerability and the hurt and the parts of themselves that they've been taught to suppress, they then do the easier work. They hurl sexist remarks as loudly as they can into a microphone because anger is one of the emotions that patriarchy actually permits. And then the women on these podcasts, and I want to be respectful here, but many of them are really young. And some of them don't really know their own minds yet, which is completely normal at that age. But they're being put in rooms designed to humiliate them, with men who have rehearsed their arguments thousands and thousands of times in front of audiences who are there to watch those women lose. It is not a debate, it's just content, and women are the product of that content. And of course these men don't have experienced and intelligent women on their shows. Of course they don't know female inventors or scientists or founders. Of course they've never sat across from a woman who could hold her own intellectually, because if they did, if they were in the same room as these women, even just an average woman who could clearly articulate her own experience, it would challenge everything about this narrative. And more importantly, it would threaten the business model. And the whole thing only works if women remain this caricature. The moment a real woman shows up with real thoughts and complexity, the whole illusion collapses. And here's what I think is really driving this intensity all right now. Women are becoming more educated than ever. We're owning our own money, we're building independence, we're choosing partners based on genuine connection rather than financial necessity. And so that is questioning everything about what it means to be a man under a patriarchal system that told them that they were needed because of their money and their status. Because when you strip that away, when women don't need you financially, you have to bring something else to the table. Emotional intelligence, vulnerability, the ability to actually connect. And that means facing all of those uncomfortable things that they have spent their whole lives avoiding. And women have always done that work. We're very good at being there for each other. We're good at talking through our pain and our trauma and coming out on the other side of it. It's not an easy thing to do, but we do it. In fact, I'm about to go see my friend and spend the weekend with her, and we're going to unpack her shitload of trauma together. So instead of learning from the very people, women, who could show them how, they're building an entire industry around making sure that they never have to.
Woo! I know that's a long clip that I squeezed in there, but I wanted to include it all because it's all, like, the way in which she articulates herself in that reel. I really wish I could articulate my thoughts in the same way. And I thought rather than trying, I thought I just include the whole thing. But it's exactly what I was saying though, you know, these men are actually craving that kind of company. And there is loneliness, there is a vulnerability there, but they aren't in that space to show it because they themselves have created a culture where they can't show it, and it's almost like they can't escape from it now. They've gone in too deep. They're in too deep, and they have to keep saying these outrageous statements for the clout. So they keep that reputation that they have built. They keep the money that they have built, and yeah, they are somewhat stuck as a product of their own making. And that's really sad. That's actually a really sad thing, to be so close-minded, but also to be trapped by your own mind. That's really, really sad. So if you haven't watched the documentary yet, I really think you should. And then I also do recommend hearing what other people's responses have been, you know, because there's so much like useful information out there, and people have framed their thoughts so eloquently, and it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out over the next week or so. And I know it would be so easy to kind of ignore and like, oh, this doesn't really affect me, blah, blah, blah. I don't have kids that I need to worry about educating them in some way, or, you know, like my algorithm doesn't usually deliver me this type of content, so again, I don't really need to worry about it. I'm happy in my own field, blah, blah, blah. But regardless, I feel like this is a conversation I very much want to be a part of. And I thought it was worth bringing to the podcast as well. So I know I haven't discussed our week 3 emergence theme so much this week. It's all about stretching for that light, and whilst the light can illuminate the joy and the expansion that we are currently moving through, it does have a way of illuminating those shadows too, and the Manosphere has done exactly that. It has brought to light this culture, or even this cult, this way of thinking that might not be having direct influence on you right now, but it's slowly infiltrating the minds of people around you. It's slowly infiltrating the way in which we go about our healthcare, family lives, business. It's slowly festering, it's slowly spreading. And who knows what kind of beast this could evolve into, but these are most certainly conversations that we need to be having. All right, honeys, I'm gonna leave it there. Thank you so much for listening as always. And hopefully next week we won't be discussing men so much. So anyway, honeys, let's keep stretching for the light as best as we can. After all, it's only when we stretch for the light that we're able to grow, that we're able to learn, that we're able to heal. That is exactly what these boys in this documentary need to do. They need to reach for the light, grow, learn, heal. There's so much healing that needs to be done, and I suppose one positive that I have seen in all this discussion around the Manosphere is that there have been so many men commenting and saying and sharing ways in which they escaped the red pill culture and managed to drag their way out of the Manosphere by just talking to women, hearing their experiences, seeing the other side of things, and yes, diving into that vulnerability that perhaps before was seen as such a weakness, but actually holds so much strength. So whilst this light that we are reaching for has the potential to not only illuminate the joy, the expansion around us, but also the shadows and the things we typically avoid. And I just hope that these boys find it somewhere within themselves to, seek that learning and seek that healing. We can only hope. But anyway, honeys, keep stretching for the light. And if you feel yourself drifting towards the Manosphere, then maybe just go outside and ask your mate for a hug and touch some grass. Do something else. All right, lovers, I hope you have a gorgeous rest of your Wellness Wednesday, and I will see you next time. Go forth and thrive. I love you. Mwah. All right, Stunners, thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Butterfly Effect podcast. I hope it has left you feeling suitably inspired. And as always, please don't forget to rate and review, like and subscribe, all those lovely things, as not only does this help the podcast grow, but it also helps us to reach more beautiful souls who need to hear these conversations. And of course, come hang out with me over on Instagram and TikTok at LaurenAmyYD, and follow the pod at butterflyeffect.pod. You can also dive deeper into yoga, meditations, poetry, and so much more with me over on Patreon. Until next time, keep living a soft life loudly because you know you deserve it, and I'll see you in the next episode. Mwah!